You walked into the room, and you already knew. You knew who was performing. You knew who was lying. You knew who smiled at you but wanted something from you. And the worst part, you were right. Every single time. Why does being right feel so lonely? This video is not about your gift. It's about the price you pay for it, and why most people who can read motives end up building walls instead of connections. Stay until the end, because the last part will change how you use this ability forever. Part 1. The Curse of Clarity. There's a word in psychology called hypervigilance. It sounds clinical, cold, like something in a textbook. But if you're watching this video, you probably live it every day. Hypervigilance is when your brain never fully turns off the threat detector. It's constantly scanning, reading faces, noticing micro-expressions, catching inconsistencies in what people say versus what they do. And here's the dark truth nobody talks about. This didn't come from nowhere, somewhere in your past. Maybe childhood, maybe a betrayal, maybe years of being let down by people you trusted. Your nervous system learned a survival rule. If you see it coming, it can't hurt you. So your brain became a motive reading machine, and it's brilliant at its job. But there's a cost. When you can see everyone's angle, everyone's agenda, everyone's hidden need, you stop being able to just be with people. Every relationship becomes a chess match you never asked to play. Part 2. Why you pull back. Let me describe something, and tell me if this sounds familiar. Someone is kind to you. Genuinely kind. No obvious motive. No red flags. And your first thought isn't gratitude. Your first thought is, what do they want? And then, even if nothing happens, even if they prove themselves over and over, there's this invisible distance you keep. Not because you hate them, but because your brain has already run the worst-case simulation and decided the risk isn't worth it. Psychologists call this defensive detachment. It's not coldness. It's not arrogance. It's self-protection that's outlived its usefulness, that hears what's happening neurologically. Your amygdala, the brain's alarm system, has been conditioned to treat emotional closeness as a threat. So the closer someone gets, the louder the alarm rings. And so you do what makes perfect sense in the moment. You pull back, and the world watches you pull back and calls you distant. Mysterious, hard to reach, but you're not hard to reach. You're just exhausted from watching everyone so closely that you never let anyone actually see you. Part 3. The Loneliness Paradox. Here's the paradox that nobody explains. The sharper your perception of others, the blinder you become to yourself. Think about it. You spend so much cognitive energy reading everyone else's motives that you rarely stop to ask, what are my motives? What am I protecting? What am I afraid of? And underneath all that perceptiveness, underneath the ability to see through people, there's often a wound that never got acknowledged. A version of you that learned to read the room because it wasn't safe to be seen. Psychologist John Bowlby, who developed detachment theory, found that children who grew up in unpredictable environments developed what he called an avoidant detachment style. They became fiercely independent, self-reliant, sharp-eyed, but they also struggled to let people love them. Not because they didn't want love, because they didn't believe it was safe, and so they ended up alone, not because people rejected them, but because they kept their perceptiveness turned outward and their heart locked away. The loneliness wasn't a punishment. Part 4. The Gift That Becomes a Prison. Now I want to talk about something your competitors won't tell you, your ability to read motives. It is a gift. People who've been through deep pain often develop what researchers call post-traumatic growth. Real, measurable increases in empathy, intuition, emotional intelligence, and the ability to read people. You didn't just survive hard things. You metabolized them into something rare. But here's where it turns into a prison. When you use your perceptiveness only as a shield, to detect threat, to stay one step ahead, to never be blindsided again, you've turned a superpower into a defense mechanism. And defense mechanisms don't let love in. They can't. That's literally their job. The prison isn't the ability. The prison is the reflex, the automatic, unconscious decision that says, I see your motive. Therefore, I don't trust you, even when the motive is just genuine care. Part 5. What they don't tell you about being perceptive. Here's what self-improvement content usually says at this point. You're different. Most people are sheep. Your loneliness is proof of your depth. And look, there's a reason that message gets 24,000 views in 5 days. It feels good. It validates the pain without asking you to change anything. But I'm going to tell you something harder and more true. Loneliness is not a trophy. Being able to see through people is not the same as being above them. Some of the people you've written off, they were real. Their feelings were real. Their offer-off connection was real. And your hypervigilance told you it wasn't safe. The research on this is sobering. A 2022 study in the Journal of Personality and Social Psychology found that people high in what researchers called social vigilance reported significantly higher rates of loneliness, anxiety, and what the researchers called connection regret. Connection regret. That moment, months or years later, when you realize that person was genuine and I pushed them away, not because they failed you, because your past did. Part 6. The real reason you're alone. I want to ask you a real question, not a rhetorical one. A real one. When was the last time you let someone surprise you? Not catch you off guard. That's different. I mean genuinely surprise you with their goodness, with their loyalty, with their willingness to stay even after they saw your walls. Because here's the real reason people who see motives end up alone. It's not that they see too much. It's that they stop believing in the exception. They've built a model of the world, built from real evidence, real pain, real betrayal. And that model says people always have an angle. And then, even when someone doesn't, the model doesn't update, the brain filters it out. Psychologists call this confirmation bias in attachment. You seek evidence that people can't be trusted, and you find it because you're looking for it. The result? You end up alone, not because the world failed you, but because your model of the world became more important than the world itself. Part 7. How to use the gift without paying the price. So what do you do with all of this? You don't throw away your perception. You don't pretend you can't see what you see. You do 3 things. First, separate signal from noise. Not every motive is a threat. Humans have motives for everything, including wanting to be close to you, wanting to feel valued by you, wanting to give you something real. A motive isn't automatically a manipulation. Start asking, is this motive dangerous or just human? Second, let the model be wrong sometimes. Consciously, deliberately, give one person, just one, the experience of being seen as innocent until proven guilty. Watch what happens. You might be surprised. Third, turn the perception inward. The same skill you use to read others, apply it to yourself. What do you want from connection? What are you afraid of? What wound is still making decisions on your behalf? Because the most powerful version of your gift isn't using it to keep people out. It's using it to finally let the right ones in. You weren't born to be alone. You were born with a mind sharp enough to protect yourself when protection was what you needed. But you're not that child anymore. And somewhere out there, probably already in your life, there are people whose motives are exactly what they appear to be. The question isn't whether you can see them. The question is whether you'll let yourself believe it, that if this hits something real in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. And drop in the comments, what's the one thing that made you start reading people? I read every single one.